what was some of your other good advice? Because I know so many people that have this, like, I just need to hear something as I'm going and I'm feeling those downsides and I'm not sure if it's working and I'm losing faith and all these things you're going to need within the healing process. What are some of the things that you, techniques, tips, advice, anything that kept you and is keeping you to continue on the healing and not give up?
Yep. Bunch of stuff. I mean, So when I look back at kind of my journey, I think the first thing is sort of taking charge of your own recovery, right? Like, I think we have an expectation, again, that doctors are going to heal us and that we don't have to really think about, we don't have to drive the train at all, so to speak. I think chronic illness is kind of a different story. Like you have to control it, and you have to put faith in people to try to help you, but you got to be your own master, and you just got to be like, look, I'm going to take charge of the situation and I'm not going to accept no for an answer. And I'm going to be very diligent and fastidious about things. And I'm going to check things off as I go, because you're solving a puzzle. Again, it's not, you are House MD, so to speak, right? Because those people don't really exist. At least I haven't come across them.
Right.
That again, we will not rest until we find this solution to this mysterious illness. You get some tests, they shrug their shoulders. In that process, you need to, I think, be very diligent about what you're doing and, to your point, track it. So diagnostics are good. Like, even diagnostics that don't show anything are helpful because, okay, it's not bad. That's fine, right?
Yeah. Track
it. Like, I have a spreadsheet that's got like 400 lab results on it, tests that I've tracked over time, because one, you're going to do that. You're going to go to some doctor and they're going to run tests and they go, well, we don't know. We don't see it. Okay, fine. Is there anything else you can do? No? Okay, I'm moving on then, right? And again, that's where it's like, you got to take control. And then when you go to the next doctor and they say, we're going to run these, and you go, no, already did that, right? Here are the results. If you think they're going to be different for some reason, but otherwise we're past that, right? And if they won't do that, move to the next person, right? Like, you got to be in charge of these things. So that's kind of the diagnostic piece of it, is like tests. I mean, as much as sometimes it's hard to actually get diagnostics, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do them, because they can be helpful. There's environmental toxin tests out there. There's mycotoxin tests. Like, do that stuff. Are they valid? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But at least you got something to go off of, right? And I think you don't want to just be like throwing darts at the wall.
Right.
Like, as much as you can find something that someone has a treatment for, go after that, right? If you can't find anything, okay, start chipping away at whatever else is out there. So then on the treatment side, I think there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's things that people will say is crazy or is just, dangerous even. My experience has been most of the stuff is not dangerous. Like, I mean, to each his own. I'm not recommending anybody go do a specific treatment. But what I found was, again, go after, like, look at the diagnostics that you have. But if you can't find something, go dig into things as much as you can. I don't like this idea of do your own research. That being said, do your own research. Like, and that to me comes down to, I take a lot of stock in testimonials, in like people that have done things that say, this worked for me, this was helpful. Because again, that's like, there's no incentive behind that. And there's lots of monetary incentives behind test results, drugs coming to market. There's bad incentives behind that.
Yeah.
There's no real bad incentive behind some person who's not making any money off of anything and has spent a lot of money saying this treatment helped me, right? So I tend to trust those things. So anytime I did something, it was like I tried to find as many people as had done that, look at various ways that it could be done, whatever it was, and I tried to assess the safety as best I could. But then at some point say, okay, I'm going to commit to doing this, and at that point, I can't resist it. I can't second guess it. I have to do it. And I have to do it all the way. That's the other piece, is like when I talked to Ben Aarons before going to your treatment center, he was like, at some point I just took a leap of faith where it was just like, I have to like trust in this because it's a big piece of it. Because if you're going through a treatment, if you're resistant to it or you think it won't work, that you can actually sabotage the success of that treatment. So it's like, once you make the decision, go like believe in it. You have to. It's an incredibly important piece of it because it's just you're self-sabotaging if you go the other way. The other thing is, again, like really doing it. So don't sort of mix and match things. Pick the thing. I mean, it can be somebody giving you multiple treatments like you guys do. That's fine. But do that. Do it exactly as it's prescribed because it's the only way, too, that you can assess its effectiveness, its efficacy. If you sort of do it, and then you go, it didn't really work for me. And then someone says, well, did you do everything that you were? And they go, well, not really. It's like, well, you know. So to me, it's those things. It is, you know, again, sort of take control of your healing, especially the mental aspect of it. Like you can really take control of that, right? And it's such a big piece of it too. Take control of that. And just you be like your own Sherlock Holmes, right? And then when you make a decision, you know, make a command decision and do it. And then assess the results because that's the only way you can do it, right? And sometimes look, treatments that don't work, there's another piece of this. Just because it didn't work for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Absolutely.
And you can have on paper, theoretically, the exact same condition. And someone can say, you have neurological Lyme, you know, whatever, ozone worked for this person, didn't work for this person. I don't know. That doesn't mean it didn't work for them. It's just, we're all different. We are snowflakes. We have unique aspects to us that might preclude or inhibit or help a certain treatment over another. And that's just the way it is. But that's okay. Like you go through something and it's like it worked or it didn't work or it worked a little bit, you know, track that. And then if it didn't work, it's like, that's okay. Like, okay, that didn't work. On to the next thing, you know? I mean, and that's all you can do. That's all you can do.
Yeah, it's a bit of my pet peeve about, you know, people sharing their therapies. I think it's wonderful to share the information, share the stories. I don't think it's that smart to say, you got to do this because it worked for me. You know, and to say, and people then do it and it doesn't work. And they're just completely, you know, off put from everything and said, I believed in you. How did it work for you if it doesn't work for me? I mean, that's the whole idea of personalized medicine. That's the idea, you know, we can't rest on protocols or seeing each other as exactly the same because we're totally not. Like you said, snowflakes, incredibly unique. What got us to a certain position of where we are is going to be so different. Even if all the diagnostics look the same, you have the same, you know, diagnosis. And no, it's just not going to be that way. But unfortunately, a lot of people do rest on that. That's why for me, understanding what you went through, that's nice to know what treatments you might have done that helped you, but it's not at all going to help anybody. It might open up their awareness to, I've never heard of some type of therapies that I should look into. But understanding that you'd want to, again, go personalized off of that.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the other thing I would say is, so the way I try to like encapsulate all of that is one size fits none. That's kind of my statement there. Right. And then I lost my train of thought of what I was going to, whatever. I'll come back to it. I was going to say something and then I thought of the one size fits none and the other.
Well, the one size fits none is a wonderful thing. So that kind of can answer for the two things.
I still have some brain fog from time to time. So.
We all do. And again, those are the things that I find, you know, not interesting, but someone that goes through treatment and then near the end, you know, either opts out again because they're not fully committed and don't want to address, let's say, the mental issues, the psychological ones, because they just want IVs or things like that and say, hey, I'm 90% better, but a piece of their puzzle is still missing. You know, it's 90% there, but then they opt out. Or this idea near the end of, hey, I still have a little brain fog or I'm tired some days that I don't sleep well. It's like everyone in the world, I think, has that too. I understand that we all want to be at our prime, but People without chronic disease have that on a big basis.
Yep. And what's really important is your relationship to it, right? What is your relationship with it? Is it something that you think is the end of the world? Because if it is, you are just, again, sabotaging yourself, right? If you get to the point where you're just like, whatever, the less energy you give that, the less it will impact you over time. And that's a huge learning piece too. The more you resist whatever your condition is, the more it's a bully. Right? Yes. Your condition is a bully, and bullies like it when you fight back. Yes. And so the less you fight back, which is weird, I get it, but the more you can kind of accept things and almost like wrap your arms around it, the quicker you will heal. And that's a hard thing to get your mind around, but that's really the way you got to think about it. It's just, these things are bullies. And bullies give up when you just go, I don't care, do your worst, whatever. It's not fun for them anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece. The other thing I now remember what I was going to say was just opening your aperture. Like you got to really have an open mind about what might work for you. Cause it might be something that there are things I've done at this point that 5-10 years ago, I would have been like, are you kidding me? Really? No, like bullshit. That's not that. Now I'm like, okay, sure, let's try it. Yeah. Energy work, remote energy work, things like that. That I'm like, what? That now I'm like, okay, all right, why not? Right?
But you got to reach that point of why not, in a sense. I think that's the point of openness. If you've gone through so much and it hasn't worked, like what would stop you from the why not, except maybe ego, closed-mindedness, kind of saying that I'm just a skeptic of that stuff, but nothing else has worked and you thought it might also. So let's just, start to get outside your comfort zone here, because that's usually where healing happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and again, it's one thing if you think it's dangerous, okay, like do some assessment. But if it's just weird where you're like, really? That's a thing that people do? That shouldn't preclude you from trying it, especially if you've tried other things that haven't worked for you.
And the funny thing is, we usually start with the dangerous stuff. We start with the drugs that have tons of side effects, tons of toxicity to it. We start with the surgeries where we literally cut you open, like traumatic event to the body, to cut it, to pull things out of it, to, surgeries are not pretty. My father did surgeries before he went into this type, and he said a lot of times it's not exact science either, and you're just ripping up tissue. And
I'm amazed actually how often I hear people, not even chronically ill people, that will do things like gallbladder removal. And I'm like, and they're like, it's no big deal. It's an accessory organ. I'm like, is it really? I heard that. Like, it's an accessory organ. And I was like, well, there's a lot of things we don't know, guys. Like we sort of walk around with this assumption that we've got it all figured out with the human body. We're just filling in the details, but we understand pretty much everything. And I just don't think that that's true. And it's, the moment you remove something from your body permanently, I don't know, that's probably, there's downstream effects.
Huge downstream effects. I mean, you look at what we do, when we cut out certain things that we say aren't necessary, with those, the tonsils, the appendix, right? Sometimes we have to, in a sense, but we should be doing everything to save those. The tonsils are so necessary for immune response. They basically catch everything, start producing antibodies before it becomes a systemic issue. So huge part of our immune system. And the appendix is a wonderful source for a microbiome. Literally is a patch there that helps feed so many people after they get removed start having gut issues for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And so we should be looking at, hey, we have everything in here for a reason. Let's optimize it any way possible. And then if that doesn't work with all this kind of, out there stuff that we say is alternative, then let's go to cutting it out as a last resort. Absolutely. Then let's go to the, tough drugs as a last resort. And of course, I believe in those resorts, but let's push them to the end of the line. Let's use them in a different way. And on top of that, let's also not separate the mental side of things from the physical side of things. And that's something, you've definitely targeted on